Hello, this is Ubisund, our new series, keeping in contact with our alumni. And our first guest is Matthew Berg. He was one of our students I think you finished last year, right, Matthew?
Yes, I finished spring 2020 with my master's.
Wonderful. Well, and you're back. I mean, I
I
know
am.
we have a little bit of separation anxiety. But we want to know what's going on with your life. We want to also um, discuss with you or talk with you about your experience at Montclair State University in our
Sure.
department and um, why, in a way, you decided to major in Spanish. That would be probably the obvious question.
Well, so I always loved language. When I was a little kid, I used to use like my Christmas money to buy like bilingual dictionaries, even though I didn't understand anything that was in them. I would just like flip through it. And I remember one of the first books I remember getting is like this huge atlas I would flip through and just so there was always like an international interest for me. I actually came to Montclair as a French major. Um, and it all kind of happened on a whim. In reality, I decided for some reason I wanted to study in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I basically changed my whole major and everything so I could go to Buenos Aires. And then from there, I just ended up loving Spanish, and especially Spanish language literature spoke to me. Um, and so here I am.
That's great. So I guess we could argue that study abroad is always beneficial for students,
Yes,
even though now we can't travel much,
right.
but soon I guess we will be able to go back. Um, so study abroad was a good experience for you.
Yes, definitely.
Mhm. And so once you decided that you wanted to major in Spanish, obviously you embraced our department and you started from your BA and then you completed a master's degree with us.
Yes.
So I guess you liked the experience. I mean, beyond the literature, beyond the language, what do you think that our department has to offer? So suppose there are other students there that say, hey, I'm undecided. I would like to consider languages. Why do you think it's a good idea?
Sure. Well, in my case, it was a great idea. One, because I knew the department, so that really made it a no-brainer to do the master's program. Also, because our program offers a 5-year program to get your master's, so that's another reason I decided to do it as well because it was an expedited way to get my master's. And I'm more academic oriented, like I'm in a PhD program now, and so my PhD program won't take as much time because I already have a master's. So it's kind of really jump started me there. But on a more personal level, the professors in the Spanish, I almost said our department, but it's not my department anymore. uh,
Yeah, yeah,
well, you're right. The professors in the Spanish department are very willing, they're very good at recognizing when students want more and are very good at helping you along the way and giving you space to be creative and grow. Without you, Dr. Galope, without Dr. Garcia Vizcaino, I don't think I would be the academic that I am today. And, the department gave me a lot of license to do what I wanted and to explore research and academic activities that I wanted.
thank you. But certainly you made a lot of contributions to our department, and we try to offer as many possibilities,
Hmm.
precisely tailor-made for students. So some students have a desire to pursue literature inquiries, some others prefer translation, or you know, we try to cater to students and also to give them the opportunity to go on after they get their masters or their BAs. And you are now at Temple University.
I
And
am.
I hear it's a very interesting program, and what you're doing is really promising. Can you tell us? what's going on there?
About the program in general, or about like my
About
research?
you in the yes, you in the program, and how you feel um, that this second act in your career after getting your master, now you are pursuing a PhD. So
Hmm.
obviously you're going to be in academia for life.
Um, well, it's definitely a different experience. You kind of have to hit the ground running. Your bachelor's, I mean, obviously your bachelor's is kind of just not like willy-nilly, but like you don't necessarily have to have like a direct direction. I guess the best way to think of it is kind of like in a pyramid, almost like you start at the top with your bachelor's where you can be pretty vague about what you want, and then your master's even like I knew I wanted to get into a PhD program, but you know, a big thing about being here now is knowing like what's your shtick, what's the thing that you want to study, and constantly just pulling things from your classes to help you get to that goal of this is my dissertation, this is what I'm doing. And so when I was in my bachelor's, obviously that was not anywhere near on my mind. And when I was in my master's, I was doing a master's thesis with you, and I was thinking about that obviously, but every one of my classes I wasn't like, how can I make this into my master's thesis, if that makes sense. Here, I'm literally, it's my second week of classes, and every single class, everyone tells me, you need to make an assessment of everything you're reading for your classes and be like, will this serve me in the future, and how? So I think it's definitely Montclair helped me at least decide. I'm definitely better off than a lot of people, I think, because another part of the first years of your PhD program is deciding what you want to do, and I kind of already have an idea. I focus on queer studies in Latin American literature. Um, and so that has given me a heads up. I already know what to look for in my class. I'm like, okay, I can use this article, this book, and that'll help push me forward.
Yeah, that well, that's actually very smart what you did in terms of organizing your time and being very economic in the way you are approaching your program of studies, because
Right.
a lot of students sometimes they are not that they're confused, but sometimes they don't have a clear direction and
Hmm.
purpose. And even though it's okay, and it's okay to change it along the way, but it also helps when you are focused, when you have, you know what you want. And that is something that departments value in students. So, but now you're taking all your classes online, right?
Yes, I used to, well, for a week I was doing two in person, but so Temple originally was doing some in person and then some online, but given that there were a lot of cases popping up on campus, they declared this week that for 2 weeks we were doing it online, and then we just got an email that we were doing all online.
For the rest of the semester.
Yes, for the rest of the semester.
Wow. But you have experience with online classes, right?
Yeah, I think honestly, the last because my last semester was when coronavirus hit. There was kind of like that really insane quick turn at Montclair and every university where all of the classes suddenly had to be online. Um, so I have experience with that and like kind of being in a class where things are really uncertain, but that's not really the case here because every one of my professors already had a backup plan in place. Like I'm taking a medieval literature class and we had a discussion board just to that we do online as an online component so that we could be used to having discussions online in case we had to go online. And all of my professors already had like lessons plans made, as far as I know, in case online happened, and then they already had Zoom links set up. So it's kind of like a seamless transition.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that some people say this is the future of academia and universities, and that's a little bit of the anxiety we feel nowadays. Is because we don't know how it's going to develop. And of course,
Right.
campus life is priceless, and a lot of people love campus life, and it's very important in the life of a student and a professor too, of course.
Right.
But this has been so unprecedented, so we don't know in what direction to go. So I guess the safest way is probably to be remote and to work with the mediation of a screen, a computer.
Right.
Luckily, we have the technology. Um, I remember you, obviously, you were very involved in our department with our cultural activities, and you were, well, a little bit of a Renaissance man in terms of a little bit of everything, right? And everything you did it excellent, very well.
Thank you.
Um, but you were with our honors society, the
Mhm.
Hispanic Honor Society, Sigma Pi, and then you did the Spanish club, and
Mhm.
what else you did? You did all the cultural activities. You were a graduate assistant, research
Yes.
assistant. So was that a plus, or actually it was too much for you to do? I mean, looking back now in perspective, you wish you could have focused yourself more, or you are grateful that you were able to take, you know, taste a little bit of all those waters.
Well, to be totally honest, I have kind of two opinions. It's kind of like you know how like you have multiple parts of your brains that work in different sites. Like to start, I mean, hindsight is 2020, right? So if I could do it all over again, knowing where I was going to end up, because when I stepped foot at Montclair, I was like, I guess I'll be a high school teacher. I don't know. You
Mhm.
know, like now I'm like in a PhD program doing academic stuff. So it's like if I had known from the start, I've been like, okay, well, screw the French major, just do the Spanish major, or do a double major in another language, so you can incorporate another literature, and then only do cultural activities that are going to help you in the future or whatever. But obviously, that's never how it goes. You don't just. I mean, like I had an idea that was forming throughout my whole process at Montclair, but no one ever just goes in and then follows exactly to plan how
Mhm.
their life's going to go. Do you know what I mean? So I actually think it really helped me to do all of those things because Montclair was really a place that I got to explore all these different possibilities. And when you do that many things, you get to rule out what you don't like.
Mhm.
Um, I think I would have perhaps, I think my workload with all that stuff was pretty intense and it helped prepare me for, let's say, a PhD program workload. But I could have probably used dropping one or two things
Mhm.
to have a more relaxed life in general. And to be able to focus more on like one or two things maybe as opposed to focusing less on so many things.
Mhm. Yeah, I think yeah, you're right. Probably you did too much, but you gain experience.
Right.
But so that would be your piece of advice to your to the GA that follows after you, right? Okay, prioritize or
Yes. If you're going to be a graduate assistant, I think that by the time you get into your master's, you don't necessarily need to know exactly what you're going to do with your graduate degree, but you need to start prioritizing and focusing down.
Mhm. Good point.
Because you're coming off a bachelor's where like you have 4 years to figure everything out, so you have a lot of wiggle room. You know what I mean? You have I went through like three majors. I was
Mhm.
like a justice studies major. I was a French major, and I found I graduated on time. But your master's is at max 2 years, so you have
Mhm.
to figure out at least what your endpoint is and how you're gonna get there.
However, I would say that everything you did somehow will, if it has not yet, it will eventually resurface, appear as beneficial.
I
Um,
agree, but you have to know how to make it beneficial,
oh yes,
and
that's.
I personally think that's what your graduate studies are for.
Mhm. I
Your your bachelor's, you get all that experience, and then your master's and beyond, you figure out, okay, how am I going to make this work for me? It's all sitting in my brain. How am I going to pull it at the right time?
Yes, because I even remember you being very active in audio description and
Hmm.
theater and translation and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Honestly, that helped me though, maybe not directly in my studies. As well, aside from I do like to incorporate films, so it was nice doing audio description, but like it helped with my grammar in Spanish and publishing in Spanish.
Mhm.
Um, so it was definitely the most rigorous I had to be to push myself to write in Spanish.
Exactly, and now that you mention it, you even published a couple of articles
Yes.
during your masters
Hmm.
with us. One was a very interesting article about queering Don Quixote. Can you tell
Hmm.
us a bit about that? And if you can use that, or which one are you going to use in your further studies.
Well, actually, I already got some pretty good mileage out of the Querying the Quixote article because I used it as my writing sample to get into a PhD program. Um,
And may, this is probably, I don't know, a little bit of an indiscretion, but you were, I think you were the first choice, right? In that program.
um, I think so. I don't know. I got a fellowship, so I got on the payroll.
Very important, very important.
hmm
Very good. Okay.
And I think it speaks to the department because like they recently hired a new professor who we were discussing this before this, who I'm interested in potentially being my advisor, who focuses on non-normative identities and things like that. So I think
Perfect match. I mean, that's
right,
exactly how a department looks for the graduate students, right?
right.
A need for space. But go on with your Quixote, the figuring of Don Quixote.
Sure. So I did a queering of the character Don Quixote, which means a queer reading. And a queer reading is when, I mean, it can mean various things, but the direction I went is reading a character that is not necessarily traditionally queer or gay, and then reading them as such.
Mhm.
So I read Don Quixote the as like an identity formed out of homosexual repression of the original character Quijano, and how this persona is a hypermasculine persona used to try and escape that homosexual self. Um, and I think part of why I really liked it as a writing sample is because it represents precisely what I want to do.
That's very original because there've been a lot of psychological insights into Don Quixote. Don Quixote, some people thinking that there was even well, Henry Sullivan even mentioned the idea of incest and the fact that his
hmm
madness was a way of avoiding incest in the household. There are many approaches, but this one in which you not only psychoanalyze the literary character as queer, but also how society impacted, right?
hmm
And that was a very groundbreaking article,
Thank you.
and it's published.
Yeah.
And what else? What else did you do?
Uh, what else did I do? Like, what else did I publish?
You published another one, right?
Oh Jesus, what was it?
Was
I
it?
actually think it was one I wrote for your class. It was on La Ciénaga, which is an
Yeah.
Argentine movie, and it was also on El Ángel Exterminador by Buñuel,
Yes.
and it talked about the use of space as the use of physical space as a means of like metaphorical separation between classes. So
Mhm.
like
Social class.
right, social classes. So especially La Ciénaga
Mhm.
has a very direct criticism of bourgeois life in
Yeah,
Argentina or the upper middle class.
yeah.
Um, and so I did a compare. That one was definitely like a baby article, I think, because I wrote it in my undergrad and it was like my first experience trying to publish something. So it was a good learning experience, but it definitely doesn't really have much to do with what I actually ended up doing.
But you revisit it. You have to revisit it. You have to go
Right.
back and hopefully you don't like it in a couple of years.
I think I already don't like it.
But if you still like it in a couple of years, it means that well, I'm still right. So yeah, but that's how it is. You start building and adding
hmm
to your grounds and to your base, and so that's wonderful. Okay, so and now you mentioned that you are working on Latin American literature from
hmm
your perspective.
hmm
Any specific author that you're considering?
Well, I wrote my, as I'm sure you are very well aware, because Dr. Galope, you were my thesis advisor. My entire master's thesis was on Manuel Puig. So honestly, my main goal is I love Puig, but I'm trying to get out of the Puig hole, let's say, because I don't really want to center myself there, and I'm trying to explore more contemporary authors. So, for example, Samantha Schweblin is someone who I'm looking to explore more.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
hmm
yeah. Actually, I think I have it here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gonna do a paper for a class on her novel,
Oh yeah.
Distancias de Rescate, I think it
Yeah.
is.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Very disturbing. I have it too somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking to explore her and maybe some Silva Almada. Um,
Hmm.
but nothing particularly in the works yet, but I'm trying. That's the beautiful part about knowing what I want to do. I can use my classes, and all the essays I have to write. Like I have a 20th century American lit class that has a lot of options for an essay, so I'm trying to like pick things that are not in my wheelhouse usually.
Well, I guess obviously you're quite busy and enjoying this new stage in your career. Um, I mean, it's too soon to be nostalgic, right? Because even though we call this series Ubi Soon, which has a hint of nostalgia,
Hmm.
but we thought that you were the best candidate for first conversation precisely because you are a recent graduate. And
Hmm.
so, in a way, we're going backwards from the most recent to further back
Right.
in the history of our department. So, anyway, but still, even though it's a few months, but are you feeling any nostalgia for the old Ivy?
I do, honestly. I think it has to do with I didn't really get to do like a proper goodbye to anything because I kind of just had to like get all my crap and leave with coronavirus.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not originally from around Montclair. I'm from further south, so I don't get to go to Montclair. And I kept getting emails about all these places that I used to go to that were closing because of coronavirus. So that I'm gonna have a permanent nostalgia for those places, I guess, because they don't exist anymore. Um, but I do. I think also I'm in a new city. I'm in Philadelphia, obviously, and I can't really explore at all because of coronavirus.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I spent a lot of time thinking about Montclair and the people I know there.
Good days. Well, you know that this house is, and the doors are open for you and for all the graduate students, the alumni that will come back eventually, join us. We have a lot of cultural activities. Our department is very proud of all the cultural activities that we organize.
Hmm.
And, and as you very well know, is the students who work very hard
Yes.
to put all these activities out there. I mean, whether it's a poetry reading or a lecturer coming to visit, and I mean, we have our YouTube channel. We have now we have our Zoom channel. Um,
Hmm.
we broadcast live and we enjoy all this, but we couldn't do it without our students. And so now that you are still, I mean, because once um, Montclair alumnus, always part of Montclair, um, I hope you keep bringing new friends and new subscribers to our activity and participate actually. Hopefully next time you'll participate as Dr. Berg. Uh,
I would be happy to. That one's going to be a few years down the line. I have to get the diploma before I can call myself a doctor. But
well, but you will, and you know, and what 2 or 3 years you'll be ready to probably defend your dissertation.
yeah.
Um, and we'll welcome you back to a presentation or whatever, and anytime, the doors are open. And thank you, Matthew. The best of luck with your career,
Thank
and
you.
and well, uh, we'll see everybody back next week with
Yeah.
another episode of Ubisunt.